Hi, everybody, and welcome to our podcast today. We're going to talk about strategic planning for 2021. We are all going to be super happy to have 2020 behind us, me as well, and hopefully we never have to live through another year like that again. For 2021, there are some key things that you need to accomplish in the first quarter in order to get your plan set up for a successful strategic plan year for 2021. So we're going to cover some of those in the slides today. We're going to be short and sweet and to the point, hopefully. But my father always used to say, those who fail to plan to fail. And we want to make sure that we have hitting the ground running in January, and we have everything buttoned up as far as what we need to accomplish, what the data elements we need to look at, and so forth. So let's take a quick little look at those who fail to plan.
It broke the, oh my God. Wall. Oh, yeah, right.
All right, so those videos were funny, right? So we're going to make sure that we plan well for 2021. And as I said, there's some really critical milestones that we need to accomplish in the first quarter in order to set the year up correctly. Setting the timeline, you usually typically work backwards, right? So using a January 1st renewal, you're really trying to figure out when do you want your open enrollment in 2021? When do you want to be able to send the carrier file feeds for the new enrollment period, the new plans, the new enrollment, the migration of people from one plan to the other, and back out from there. So usually that happens in November this month. We're going through open enrollment for next year. And you kind of back into it from there. So in the first quarter, you want to be setting your timeline. You want to set your goals and objectives for the year and set up the meetings in advance. So we start out by the first meeting in January, which is going to be online this year. We're looking at the budget to actual, what happened during open enrollment. We call that the migration report, right? So in January 1st, people moved into new plans, added dependents, took people off. So we have to reforecast the budget because of that migration. And so that would be something that would be done in January, as well as setting up the timeline. And then, of course, the financial management has to be done in the first quarter, looking at last year, which would be 2020, looking at the budget to actual and reforecasting your budget for 2021. That has to happen in January. Taking a look at the state of the market, what's happening in the state of the market. That's very important to look at the pharmaceutical distribution list that's in the pipeline for 2021, because we know that there are a robust number of pharmacogenomics, which are going to be gangbuster drugs. We talked about those in our last session. The great news is that these pharmacogenomics are they're life altering. So they are going to solve and cure diseases that we've suffered with for generations. But they're at an extraordinary price tag. So we have to keep our eyes on those, looking at our utilization and seeing what the pipeline looks like for potential users of those pharmacogenomics. And then, of course, the preliminary planning of what is it that we want to tackle for this year. So we're going to go through just a couple of samples for you to see what we typically do. So in our 2020 initial planning, we're looking at all of the things that we need to accomplish this year. So we put them down on paper and we figure out every single month of the year, something needs to be accomplished for us to stay on target and stay on task. At Tryon, we have weekly calls with our clients. They're the same time and the same day every week. And we kind of go through the to-do list and we look at the deliverables, when they're due, and who's assigned to them. And we hit that list on a weekly basis to keep us on target. And make sure that every month all of our work is getting done. But the strategic planning and the renewal planning and the competitive bidding and the vendor management, all those things need to be on your timeline. So I love this slide because not only does it look like a rainbow and it's pretty, but it kind of goes through the quarters of the year for me. So, in January and February, we're looking at doing a deep data dive, right? So we're asking our carrier partners to give us utilization information from the prior year. So in January and February this year, along with reforecasting the budget and looking at the migration report and setting up the timeline, we're going to be asking for data, which, by the way, is one of our upcoming podcasts. So tune in if you don't know what to ask for from your carrier. But we're asking our carriers to tell us specifically, what did our utilization look like last year? What were the large claimants? What were the diagnosis in the large claimants? Because right now, your large claimants, time and time again, this is proven out, your large claimants are spending 80 to 90% of your dollars. So you need to know and understand who they are and what the diagnosis is in order to plan your strategic initiatives, right? So if you have a high number of cancer patients, or if you have a high number of diabetics, so we know 34 million Americans have diabetes, and that's something that is driving our cost and something that we can put in programs into the strategy to hit those people with good information and value-based plan designs where we have disease management programs in place where we can actually incent them to participate. Cancer, there's centers of excellence that are lower in cost and higher in quality, and they are using the cutting edge technology for cancer treatment. So of course it's a win-win. It's a win for you because it's going to lower your cost, and it's a win for the employee because they're getting better care. So really looking at that data in Q1 is super important because it's going to provide you insight as to what your strategy should be. And then of course it dovetails into the actionable items. So if you identify that centers of excellence or narrow networks or a diabetes management coaching management program is something that you want to add for your benefits in 2022, you're going to want to do an RFP process, and that usually takes place in June and July. And then in August, we come back to you with the presentation of findings, right? So here's what we wanted to solve for. Here are the vendors in the marketplace that we went out and looked at, and here's what the cost is and the performance metrics that they're willing to put in place in performance guarantees. And then of course, in August and September, you're making final decisions, potentially having to go to your C-suite or your board of directors or your benefits committee to get approval on moving forward with the vendor results. And then of course, we move right into implementation in Q3. So that's kind of really how we line up the year in a very matter-of-fact process. And here's a sample timeline that we draft, and we really actually go through each bullet point, each line item of everything that needs to be accomplished, and we put a date to it or a month to it to make sure that it stays on our radar for those weekly calls. So that's the timeline, sample timeline that we draft for the year. And as you can see, it backs into that open enrollment timeframe. You always want to take a look at what you did last year to refresh what accomplishments that you had and enjoy those and celebrate them. There were far too few in 2020. And really understand, you don't want to have too much change for employees, especially right now. So you want to make sure that you're methodically chipping off your strategic objectives in a 3-year plan so that you're not doing too much at one time. As I said, current state, looking at your demographics, where you are in the US, if you've had one area that was in a hiring time last year or the year before, you want to make sure that you know where your folks are. And the demographic analysis is so important. So if you haven't done this, please do it at the beginning of the year, because looking at your gender mix and your age and your demographic dashboard is, again, really important because the different generations in our workforce, and there's 5 generations in the workforce right now, their needs and wants are different, right? And how we communicate to them is different. And we need to be making sure that we have a breadth of options so that everybody has an opportunity to get what they want and they feel satisfied with their benefit plan. The benefits are second to payroll. They're very valuable. We actually have an upcoming podcast on benefit statements. So we like to tell employees that, we spend an extra $16,000 a year on your healthcare benefits per employee on average, 13 to 16. And that's in addition to your paycheck. So it's important to tell them that. Looking at the migration report, this is a migration analysis. We talked about that a little earlier, where we're looking at singles to families, families to singles, and then the plan design tiers. And then, of course, this is a utilization dashboard. We want to know how many high claimants you have, where the cost is coming from. Is it pharmacy? Is it, inpatient facility? What are the key metrics and what's driving your cost? This was a metric from 2019 for a client. But high claimants, looking at those, looking at what disease categories those high claimants are, and looking at the cost from 18 to 19 to 20 to see your rolling trend by year. And then, of course, your top prescription drugs. It's always important to understand those drugs and what those disease categories, what those drugs are treating. We talked about high claimants. They used to be a lightning strike. They've become more and more commonplace. So tracking them and understanding the diagnosis and putting strategic efforts and plans in place to hit those is certainly key. And then just here are some financial updates. This is the budget that we update our projections for the next year. We do this in January. We base this off of last year's utilization with the migration report elements baked into the 2021 budgets. We look at the financial dashboard as enrollment, the cost to employees, and then of course the cost to employer and the trend, national trend versus your trend specifically. We always like to cover state of the market. This is one of my favorite slides. Healthcare is outpacing inflation. It's outpacing workers' wages. It's pretty much outpacing everything, even though it's calmed in the last couple of years. We look to see this increasing again because of pharmacy. It's always nice to know where you are versus the national averages based on your business industry and your size group. And that is our presentation for today. We really look forward to our upcoming podcasts. We hope you enjoyed this and found it helpful. These are going to be posted on our website. So mbgrayhealthcare.com. You'll find the upcoming sessions that we'll be doing, and we look forward to seeing you. So everybody have a great Thanksgiving and enjoy my little cartoon.